Good evening, everyone. Another late post. But this post, I want to direct it to those who are considering leaving V1 Church, um, those who have already left V1 Church. Some of you are new to my page and maybe haven't heard this part or have seen when I first left. I do have a video up of the reason why I left. And I just kind of want to give you guys encouragement and an update and share what it was like when I first left. Okay. Um, for anyone who has been following me knows that I have said from the beginning that I did not leave V1 Church because I was hurt or abused or anything like that. I left because I started hearing the testimonies, the stories of abuse, certain leaders. Hey, Brooklyn, certain leaders left, which caused me to question some things. My husband received a specific phone call from somebody, and at that time, I was still drinking the Kool-Aid. And at that time, I told my husband I hopped on the no gossip train. And it wasn't until like I said, certain leaders within the global team left that I began to question what was actually going on. Although about a year or so before that, I started realizing certain things happening that I began to question anyways. So April of this year is when I left. It's also when I began to expose things going on in V1 that I was hearing about spiritual abuse, about gaslighting, about shunning. And there was a point when, so I had already heard a lot of information about the departure of specific leaders. And I still wanted to wait. And at one point, I had asked who is the leader of the global campus. And that started, Brooklyn, you'll probably remember, that started a whole line of conversation, starting with Irene asking what happened, to another person who just joined V1 Global. And that person had a whole lot to say. And Brooklyn, I think, even stepped in and was like, hey, look, there's relationships that were built here. And, we're family, so I even have screenshots of those conversations as well. And this for me was a sign of there's a lot of covering up happening. And so Josh Hamstra, the executive pastor of V1 Church, did I got sent a meeting that he did with the global team. And I watched it. And then another meeting happened with Mike, Josh, and Heather. At this time, Brooke Grigowski, I believe, was, what was her position? She was helping run Global with Pastor Patrick. And so I watched this meeting. And again, by this time, there was already a lot of information that I knew. So I knew that the things that Mike was saying was not true. So I made that decision to send an email to Josh Hamstra that I would be no longer a part of or associated with V1 Church. I asked to be removed from everything that had to do with V1 Church, from the classes to the Facebook, the global Facebook team, everything. their systems, everything. And I began more exposing and research into V1 and its leadership. And by doing that, more people ended up coming out, direct messaging me of their experiences with V1 Church over the years, from beginning all the way to current. And why am I sharing this? Because there are people right now in V1 Church that are considering leaving, but they're afraid to. They feel that they've heard what happened to Bakersfield and that Bakersfield was an isolated incident. It's not enough for them that people who were called pillars of V1 Bakersfield were called cancers. It is not enough for them to even see a lot of the contradictions that I've been able to prove. It's not enough for them to know that people were seriously hurt and shunned by V1 leadership and people whom they placed over this specific campus. They have also chose to dishonor and shame the pastors that left by not being honest with the global teams when they did tell them what was going on. So when I first left, after I posted the email that I sent to Josh so that way everybody would know what's going on, and that would be no longer in relation with V1, I received a direct message from Brooke. And I'm going to read it because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you who contacted me, when I did, and then also the lies from Mike as well from that meeting, that global meeting. Okay. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want you guys to be afraid that when you do decide to leave, to not want to speak out. Your stories need to be heard. There are still people that are reaching out to me from different campuses. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to read this direct message. Okay? Because what you guys need to understand is there's a reputation that V1 Church wants to be able to keep. And so they will downplay any situation that happens. They will shame others and then also accuse others of shaming. And so what I want to do is I want to give you the information and you do with it what you will. But I want you to be emboldened and have courage that if you've ever been hurt or witnessed hurt from V1, don't let it be minimized because it didn't happen to you. But speak about it. People need to hear it. People need to know that Bakersfield is not an isolated incident. Okay, so this was from Brooke on April 8th. And she says, "Hi, Nikita. I hope you're well. I've been seeing your posts as of late, and of course, am aware of your departure from V1. I only wish you the best in the future, and I fully understand we all have to be where we feel is best for us, and I respect that. I'm not here to try to convince you of anything, but I do want to share a little information that I have with you. While I wasn't able to listen to your video today in its entirety, I listened to enough to catch your point about the messiness of the honor culture that was instilled in the online campus. Now, I'm going to pause here because what's important is that the honor culture wasn't just online. And this is part of the cover up of throwing Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie under the bus, stating that they created an honor system, and it was no longer suiting the global campus. Um, it was not just the global campus that had the honor culture. It was instilled in V1 Church's culture to honor all the way from the top all the way down. There's even a video of Mike saying that Evan Wilson himself early on had heard um, people calling Mike, I think by his first name or something like that, and that he was upset. Evan was upset that people were not respecting Mike and calling him a pastor and stuff like that. Now, Mike has switched that story around to fit his own storyline. But the first time we hear it is him saying Evan Wilson was the one who initiated that specific honor culture. So we screen went gray. Okay, so even to this day, because it's hard to completely take that out once you've been practicing something for so long. Even to this day, you will see, I think recently on a video that was sent to me with Sandra, his mom, there was somebody who said, I honor that they honored her. And so, and I even herself recently mentioned honoring as well. So they are still practicing it, but they are practicing it lightly. Okay. At least from the public's point of view. And then Mike even did a whole video on honoring as well, and how to best honor Mike. So they're still practicing that, and it's not a global thing. Okay. Then she goes on to say, Pastor Mike actually did an all-in team night video on March 27th about how it's gotten out of hand and misconstrued, and he went into depth explaining the meaning of it and the purpose it initially had when implemented in the intended way. He brought correction to it, and we no longer say I honor on campus because it wasn't serving us. So you're telling me that for 3 years, all of a sudden now it wasn't serving anybody? So, yeah, Brittany even says the honor culture started before Pastor Nat and Patrick were involved. Right. Because there's even a video of Mike saying that Evan Wilson was the one who actually was very upset that Mike wasn't being honored by his, I'll call followers. All right. So there's even confirmation from somebody who was there in the beginning. Okay. So Pastor Mike also did a video with the entire online campus on our Thursday global gathering last week and explained remember, this is from April 8th. Okay. It says last week, and explained in some detail more information behind why Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie were released from the church. Not all of the details were shared in the first video of their release because the staff was trying to amicably split and not cause harm to the reputation of Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie in the process. Just know it's a bunch of bull. Sorry, I know, not Christian-like, but it is. Afterwards, it became clear that we as campus members needed additional information, so Pastor Mike did make it more plain on Thursday. I'm sure like most other situations of this nature, only the parties directly involved will know all of the details. As someone who worked very closely with Pastor Patrick, having conversations with him multiple times a day, every single day for over a year, I also have more details of the incongruencies between the intentions of Pastor Mike for the online campus and the execution of them by Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie. If I'm honest, their abrupt departure from the church was shocking to me, and really broke my heart because I held them both in such high esteem. So whatever Mike was telling people, it caused this kind of reaction to somebody who states they had a lot of communication with Pastor Patrick. And so this is part of what you guys need to be aware of, is there's so much more than what you're seeing on YouTube or Facebook, or even just as a regular person who just shows up and goes to church. There's so much more, and the deception is really, really deep. Because why aren't you still holding Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie in high esteem? Somebody higher than them must have said something to change your mind, right? Makes sense? Because they haven't done anything to where they should lose that high esteem, right? From what this person is saying they had. I'm not here to speak ill of anyone on either side of this situation. No, but what they're doing is they're trying to change certain things that I was putting out at the time that they sent this, to make it seem like it was me that was not getting the idea or the whole picture of what was going on, not realizing I had a lot more information than what she thought I had. And so she says, I just wanted to let you know that some of these things you have mentioned were addressed. And while I cannot speak for Pastor Mike, Pastor Patrick, or anyone but myself, although this whole direct message was her kind of doing that, right? I'm happy to provide the recordings for you to take a listen to and draw your own conclusions if you desire. Blessings. So, unbeknownst to her, because I had asked in the global chat who was our global pastor, people had already started sending me the videos of Josh and Mike. And so my response to her was, thank you, Brooke, for reaching out. However, you should watch the whole video in its full context. The honor culture in place in various churches honors man and not God. It is idolatry. I also watched the gathering links that were sent to me about the subject you mentioned. Actually, it was the nail in the coffin. I wish you the best. So, this, I'm going to play maybe about 4 minutes of it, because there's so much in this video. If you were to just sit down and break it down, it really would shock you, especially if you've been watching my Facebook long enough and have seen all the stuff that I've put out that have been contradictory. Also, if you have watched on the Love Agenda, he did 2 interviews with Cassidy, and an interview with Cassidy and another interview with Nellie and Israel. All 3 of them were from Bakersfield. Now, people have seen these interviews and have reached out and said, I thought that Bakersfield was an isolated incident, and I want to know, am I crazy because I experienced X, Y, and Z? So in this snippet that I'm going to share, Mike acts like there's no other issues in other campuses. Okay? So let's go ahead and listen. Because it's better to hear it from his own words, right?
And I'm being very candid in this meeting because I feel like in order for this to be a good meeting, I have to be very open and very transparent and honest with you. The way that God has given me the blueprint for V1 Church Have you ever heard that scripture where Jesus says, my burden is light, my yoke is easy? So the blueprint for V1 Church, when you do it, our vision is to be a global voice of the gospel to all people. And our mission is to make disciples that make disciples. And then the way that we have processes and the way that we have systems, when you do it the way that God gave it to me and the way that I teach it to my leaders, it works. And here's what happens. Interpersonal conflict goes really low and productivity and output goes very high. I'm going to say it again. When you do, you will find them.
Right?
People from a other parking lot, because the parking lot in church. Have you ever heard that scripture where Jesus says, my burden is light, my yoke is skin color. This is normal. Then when you go to Indiana, the same thing. I had to take our basement that was going to be for other things and turn the whole basement of V1 Indiana into a second auditorium, because so we could fit all the people. And then we had to buy a 15-passenger van where we drive the people from a other parking lot because the parking lot overflowed. Now, this growth is not mega church growth. This is called multiplication through discipleship. It's healthy growth. It's families being restored. It's kids serving the Lord alongside of their parents. It's young people. It's all coming together. It's people who are retired who are getting a new vision for their life, and they're leading connect groups and inviting their friends. And there's all this life. Healthy things grow. So whenever I see something that is,
what else grows? Mold. Mold is not healthy, but it grows.
Is not encountering that, I know that it always starts with the leadership at the top, because one of my mentors is John Maxwell.
It starts with the leadership at the top. So when things happen below that leadership, who should be held responsible? Who should be held accountable for when things happen below the top?
And he says it's the law of the lid. You can go no higher than your lid. Your lid is your leader. Now in V1 Church, I'm the ultimate lid because I'm the lead pastor. So I take full responsibility. But just like to me,
I take full responsibility. But
our campuses are like children. You love all of your children the same, but you can't spend all the time with all your children. So you have to be intentional. And if my mother had 5 kids. Now I have 5 campuses, right? 6 campuses. So you have to, I'm going to spend time with now you're on a daddy-daughter date for V1 Online, or, you're on a daddy-son date right now, you and dad, and I'm spending time with you. Then I'll go spend time with Indiana, then Long Island, then New York. And I'm monitoring things for health. And I'm being a spiritual father, and I'm checking in on.
All that sounds really good, right? So if you're sitting in the meeting, you're like, yeah, Mike, this is my pastor. Yeah, Papa Cigs, cigarettes, you know what I mean? I'm all for it. The law of the lid, John Maxwell. Heather's like, yeah, right? And everything makes sense, right? The only problem is that there are stories coming from V1 locations of mental abuse, spiritual abuse, abuse of power. He's not taken accountability for things that have happened. He has shut things down and left people without a shepherd. Right? No, put her back in there. All right, so let's keep going.
Things. And quite frankly, I felt like there were many things. I just want to read this comment because it's very timely. Stella Jack said, it's so true. My 2 sons in their 20s are now serving willingly on Long Island. So that's the proof. That's somebody in this global chat who is actually has 2 sons in their 20s willfully serving on Long Island. So now I'm not exaggerating this. If anything, I'm probably down.
Does that really prove that he's not exaggerating because of that one comment?
Playing it, to be honest with you, because the health is amazing. So here in V1 Global Online, there's a lot of things right, but there are also a lot of things that I felt like needed to be corrected because, quite frankly, it wasn't a reflection of my heart. And I think for some of you, if you were able to spend a week with me,
and this is something that he said in the meeting with V1 Bakersfield. But how do they know? They don't know my heart. They didn't have permission. But this is the thing. Mike's always sharing his heart. And after so many years of hearing what Mike Signorelli's heart is, why wouldn't they know what his heart is? Right? Or his supposed heart.
Or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you might be kind of shocked. Like, oh, wow, this is what it really is. Now I get it. Because sometimes, unfortunately, as our church has grown, sometimes there are leaders under me that do and say things that are not a reflection of how I would actually do them or say them. And sometimes that can be confusing. So just to be very, very blunt and very, very transparent, there's been many of you from the V1 Global Online who have expressed that when you joined V1 College, that you felt like things that I was teaching in our leadership college were very different than things that you encountered in V1 Church Online.
I would like to know who shared that with him. If that's even a true statement and not just something that he created or something that somebody had said to him in a way to question whether his theology aligned with scripture. And now he's using it as a tool to say there was something going on with the online campus.
And you started to feel a dissonance or a disconnect. And you were saying, man, I hear Pastor Mike teaching. I go to all the lectures and the Zooms, but then I'm seeing what the V1 Church Online is like, and it's not the same. And so obviously, because of the law of the lid, that is the result of leadership. And so there did have to be a very necessary transition that.
Liz, you're part of John Maxwell's training thing. Does that make any sense to you at all?
Happen here. Now, at the same time, I do want to honor Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie for all their contribution and all their hard work and for all the things that they did in their tenure in this particular campus. As you know, Pastor Josh had communicated this in another meeting with V1 Global Online. They had also served in different capacities. And one of the things that I always say is they were our V1 Long Island campus pastors, and Pastor Natalie helped with kids for a duration of time. Is this
now? Let's critically think about this. Okay, let's think about this critically. So, not only was Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie pastors of Global, but they also did Long Island, they did Bakersfield, they did kids. And now all of a sudden things have changed. See, these are the things that when we are, when transition, quote unquote, happens or is spoken of, we really need to perk our ears up and listen to what is saying, what people are saying, and does it align with the character of who they're talking about? Right? Because just like Brooke said, it was a shock to her. It was a shock to everyone else, including Global, which is why they're having that meeting. Okay.
Seat at the table could change, but the question is whether or not you're still seated at the table. And so like right now, I'm the lead pastor. And even though I think I have a lot more years in me, I have to prepare myself that I will not always be the lead pastor. And I know that's weird to even say that this early on, but we don't have any idolatry. When the time comes and it's the best.
Now, everyone that's been a part of V1 knows there's a lot of idolatry in V1 Church. As a matter of fact, that is why Mike Signorelli and Julie Signorelli have not been held accountable for the abuses that have happened within their church, because people are afraid to either speak or they won't speak. And it may just be for various reasons, or people see things happening and they don't say nothing, or they're just willfully blind and they're willing to promote the church, knowing that there is idolatry, there are abuses happening within the church. Okay? So for him to say they don't have idolatry, it's an absolute lie.
Best thing for our church, and maybe I'm retirement age, then there will be a passing of the baton for my position, because we don't have any idolatry around position. Pastor Josh may not always be the campus or the what are you executive pastor. We don't even know what title he has around here. He's just sitting on my couch, hanging out during our meeting. But yeah, he may not always be here. And so, he may not always be in that capacity. You may be, our V1 Mars campus pastor, when that debuts or something, yeah, sign him up, he says. So like Heather is a great example of, Heather's a great example of, she is now our next step. Like, she's an executive leader for Next Steps, but she was our director of operations. So she still had a seat at our table. She just moved over to another location. Does that make sense? And so with Patrick and Natalie, over the time that they were with us at V1 Church, they moved seats, but they still stayed at the table.
My thing is like, why did he have to use Heather as an example and then jump into Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie? Do you see the breakdown of all this? Like, lifting one person up to take another person down. Like, am I the only one hearing this? Right?
Recently, they resigned, and they are now no longer seated at the table. And what that simply means is,
and by the way, he sugarcoated that. It was more than a resignation. And this is the thing. I feel like, and this is just me, if somebody's not ready to be fully and completely honest about a situation, don't talk about it. Right? Like, he could have not said any of this, right? It wouldn't have been on record, right, of him saying these things. Because he's just lying. It's a lie after lie, while boosting other people's egos up by saying their names and saying all the things that they've done, while in the midst, here and there, putting another person who invested so much time and life and energy into the growth of Mike's ministry.
Is we honor the duration of time that they were with us and the capacities that they served. But there are also major course corrections that I have to make, and I'm working with our leaders to make in the things that they were leading. And we bless them as they transition out. We bless them in their new ventures. And as brother and sister.
Now, there was a meeting that Josh did before this, and Josh said, that they are helping Pastor Patrick and Pastor Natalie onto their new thing, which was a lie, right? They weren't helping them do anything. So now Mike has changed certain aspects of how all of this is going on. So I want you guys to start seeing the contradictions of the things that he says, because this is just one example, but I've also posted many other examples of his contradictions and his lies.
In Christ, we honor them, and we just pray nothing but the bless in their next, nothing but God's best in their next season. And so I know for some of you, because of your closeness and proximity to them, this may be difficult. It may be kind of an emotional transition, for some of you, because they're good. There are good times, all the times you laughed, all the times you cried, all the times that Pastor Patrick prayed for you, the times that Pastor Natalie was there for you. And so, this may be a difficult thing. And so it's bittersweet for me because there's a lot of work to be done, but then also there were so many good times and good memories along the way as well. And so I just I want you guys to hear me say emphatically that I wholeheartedly bless them, and we're just going to keep on keeping on. And so, Pastor Josh, did you want to say anything? I know that you had I just want to give you an opportunity if you want to.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? Good to see you guys. I've been on the stage left over here from Pastor Mike. But what Pastor Mike was saying, even in the beginning, just hearing from Brooke and Anita and Maria and, all of you guys, this campus is so precious, and I really believe the things happening right now are because the shepherding that Pastor Mike provides to this church, and us being able to do what's best for the entire church and for you guys.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. So if you pay close attention, you can see the trajectory of this conversation, right? Now it's the concern. Pastor Mike is such a great shepherd, and it's because he's such a great shepherd. But I'm telling you guys, there are stories coming out of Miami. There are stories coming out of Long Island and Indiana and New York. There are stories coming out of Global, of those very people that you heard of and more. Eddie, Jocelyn, Julie, Sandra, who calls herself Moses. Everybody calls her Moses. Them all. There are stories of abuses that they have done to other people in the congregation. And like I said in the beginning, this is for those who are considering leaving. This is for those who have left. Brooke sent me that message that I read to you guys in the beginning, read throughout this. After Brooke, I got a text message from Jocelyn, who is Eddie's wife, attempting to make contact with me. And because of her attempting to make contact with me, I then posted on Facebook, if anyone from V1 Leadership wants to reach out to me, they're more than welcome to do so via email. No one has reached out to me since then. Once I posted that, then another person of the name Mariah Trigg reached out to me. Okay. And so as you'll see, Brooke was associated with the Global functions. Okay. Jocelyn is associated with New York. Also with the dean of V1 College, that's his wife. And she also did counseling or whatnot with Mike's other his other business, counseling business that he has or had or whatever. Okay. So when they didn't get the responses that they wanted to at that point, then Maria Trigg comes along, and she and I never really had any type of conversation or issues or anything like that. So she had asked if I could reach out to her. She wanted to share a few things with me. I did. I reached out to her. I needed a witness because I noticed that the conversation was going left very, very fast with her. So I put another person on the other line with me to be a witness of the conversation.
in case she tried to go back and try to lie on my name, that at least I had a witness. And basically the gist of that conversation towards the end was I asked her who sent her. And she tried to make it seem like I was crazy. And at one point she said she wanted me to disconnect the phone call. And I explained to her that I wasn't going to do that, because this is part of the manipulation. Is if I was to hang up, then she would be able to go to whoever sent her and say how I hung up on her and I did this and I did that, right? And so what ended up happening was she ended up disconnecting the phone call after I explained to her that there was nothing going on. She said that she hopes my soul is well. And she said some other things, and I told her my soul is very well with the Lord. And she had a few choice words for me, and then she ended up disconnecting after a while. So that was the final attempt. But recently I was sent a video, or at least I came across a video where Sandra, Mike's mom, actually mentions, I believe it's on what was it, Mondays, when they do the women's thing on Mondays, I think it is, where she actually talks about Maria Trigg. And she says how Mariah, that's another thing she was talking about. You can't get my name right. It's because I've never talked to you, girl. Mariah. That she has known Mariah since her grandmother was around, because Sandra and her grandmother were supposedly friends or close or whatever. So my discernment and my assumption at the time that Mariah first reached out to me was indeed, I believe, correct. I believe that she was sent. So I tell you all this, and I share all this because there are going to be people, when they know that you have left, that will reach out to you. They will try to discourage you. They will try to make it seem like you are crazy and blowing everything out of proportion. They will try to gaslight you. They will even do shunning, where you'll start seeing people just drop off of your friends list. There will be messages, subliminal sermons, where they're going to talk about you. I mean, you name it, it'll happen. But the thing is that they want to discourage people from telling their stories. They want to discourage people from telling their truth and what they experienced. Since the first time I did one of these lives about V1, the first one of them being giving a voice to the voiceless, I feel was very pivotal for some people, because when they heard it and they heard that there was other people who experienced something same or similar, they finally realized that everything that they had discerned while under V1, they were not crazy. What they saw was legitimate. What they experienced was legitimate. And so I would like for you guys to pray for those who are, again, considering coming out of V1, those who are trying to decide if they're going to speak about their experiences or not publicly. Pray for those who have come out and are looking for direction. Some of them have not gone back to church. Some of them are not sure if they're going to go back to church. Some of them have found a good church to attend. So just pray that people continue hearing these stories and these testimonies, that they begin to share their stories and their testimonies, and know that Bakersfield and Global is not an isolated incident. The issue is from the top all the way down, all the way through V1, from connect groups to V1 College, through any leadership teams. And I'll tell you this, there is an inner circle of people who do watch these. So they do report back to Mike. So he does act like he doesn't hear these or know about any of these, but he does. And that's okay. But you need to speak. It's important that people hear what you went through. And I pray for healing for you all. I pray for courage and boldness. And I do want you guys to know that there is life after V1. There really, really is. I'm going to read some of these messages here. And you can go on the Love Agendas YouTube page and watch the testimonies. It is under, I think it's V1 Empire, Breaking Free for V1 Empire or something like that. Just Love Agenda V1, the Love Agenda V1. You can do that. All right, let me get back down here. So let me see. Okay. I remember, sorry, I'm trying to, yes, I remember. Okay, that's Brooklyn. Also, I do want to add real quick is that he claims that these campuses are healthy and that there's no drama, and all that. But there are stories of marriages, issues with marriages that are happening, some going through divorce. There are testimonies of families that are being separated, mothers and daughters not talking to, not being, there's issues with that, families being separated. And so he wants to make it seem like there's nothing going on in V1. And this is why they want to silence people, is so that the testimonies don't get let out. Global was filled with drama. It was disgusting. That's what Brooklyn says. I know Brittany said some things here. Liz says he has a problem because he says hints about how other people, pastors below him, say or do things that don't represent how he would do things or say things. John Maxwell teaches not being the smartest person in the room, and he should be allowing his other pastors to do things as they need to lead. Brittany says you can also tell by the language used by people serving who don't come from a church background. They constantly say, thank you for your yes, the rules of this house, and we get to do this. Everything is about honor, blind honor at that. Pastor Nat and Patrick did perpetuate all of this, but it wasn't their fault and they didn't start it. Employees do what managers say. And this is something that's very true, because something that's taught in V1 is that nothing happens in V1 without Mike knowing, because everything has to be passed through all of the leadership before it even comes to pass, right? And so Mike will say that he doesn't know things to limit his responsibility and his accountability. But the truth is he knows everything that goes on in V1, okay? Because people report it to him. I can't scroll down fast enough. Okay, Brittany, I read that one. Nobody is crazy. Liz wants to let everybody know nobody is crazy. They just make them feel that way. Brittany says, in my experience, it was the members who were the worst. He attracts weirdos. Okay, I was a weirdo. I guess you would say, but they do nothing about it. So that is on them. We all come from broken backgrounds. I know what drew me to V1 was the fact that they would say, about the whole deliverance thing, about how churches aren't doing deliverance and it's because pastors are walking with them and because they're afraid to do deliverance. And, so they would really put other ministries down, which over time, we ourselves would end up doing. We would think that V1 was the only one doing, and the Demon Slayers were the only ones doing deliverance. And there was a superiority complex of it. So I do want to admit and repent that I actively participated in that. It was something that I believed, because after hearing these things over a period of time, you do believe it. It's like when, you've been abused for such a long time and you're constantly hearing somebody call you out your name over a period of time, you begin to believe that you are that kind of person and that you deserve that kind of treatment. And so this is why they repeat certain things so many times. And so just know that I see your message, Brittany. But just know that Liz says Mike's way or the highway. And this is very true. But at the end of the day, Christ is the head. He's the head of the church. And we need to get to know the character of God. We need to read our word, to know how Jesus walked, to know how Jesus talked, to know what Jesus taught. And I know he likes to use this scripture out of context. Follow me as I follow Christ. This is something Paul said, but it's his faith. I would not follow Mike Signorelli any more, knowing all the things that I now know. And I'll tell you guys that there are days, I don't cry as much now, because I know that I'm kind of all cried out, at least for now. But I know that, I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow, and I don't know what kind of testimony that they have. And at some point it does become like a righteous anger. At some point it does say, man, Jesus, would you be flipping these tables, and how would you do it? And that's why, you guys, when I say something or I come on here and I show you guys something, I want to show you with his own words, with their own words, and not just make it seem like it's something that I'm making up. Because although there are people that are just going to say, they're just going to ignore it, there are people who are watching, even though they don't push the thumbs up button. That's okay. Even though they don't make comments, there are people watching, and they're listening, and their eyes are being opened. And so I really thought in the beginning of all this that it might just be 1, 2, 3 people coming out and saying something, and then it'd be done. But it's not. It's not. And every time I say, Lord, If you want me to be done, if I am done with this, then please stop sending people to me. But every time I say that, he reminds me that there are more eyes that need to be open. There are more testimonies of hurts, of abuse, of various kinds. And if he's going to use me for that, and I have to take the, what is it called? The, I don't even know. The brunt of it all, I'll do it. I'll do it until the testimonies run dry. But I also want to encourage you guys. I can't do it alone. I need you guys as well. So if you are somebody who's ready to speak, you're ready to share, reach out to me and we can just do one of these and you can pour your heart out. If you just need somebody to talk to, we're here for you. There's a group of us. And if you're somebody who says, nothing has happened to me, nothing has to happen to you in order for you to have compassion and to say, I'm no longer going to invest my money into this church. I'm no longer going to hit the like button on their videos and subscribe to their content. There are ways that you can support those who have been hurt by this ministry. And it's through taking away your support of that ministry. So I'm here for you guys. Again, there's a group of us. Pray for our meeting tomorrow. And if there's anyone else that has left and has told V1 that they have left, and wants to talk, then we can talk. All right? And just know that you're not crazy. You're not alone. And it's so funny because, he did the Domino Revival movie. And he's going to be the last domino that's going to fall. God bless you all.